So I just know that some of you right now are disappointed because you're thinking Rob should be up here. I heard his first sermon and I thought, no more. No, I'm just kidding. I'm completely kidding. I didn't hear his sermon, but I heard it was great. But no, Rob was sick this week and wasn't sure if he'd be ready to preach today. And so I said, listen, let me fill in for you, and I'll give you an extra week at the end. And so you'll get to hear the whole series that Rob has planned for you, but with a tiny little interruption on my part. And winter is here again. No, not really. But it's summer, isn't it? And so in summer, you think about vacations and you think about resting, don't you? So today, I'm actually going to preach a sermon that has to do with resting, that has to do with patience. Now you're saying, uh-oh, Jerry's one of the most impatient people I know. What does he know about this? Well, I know how not to do it. But I guess I'm a fellow struggler. And so, patience. But the tack I'm going to take with this is not actually to talk to you so much about patience as to talk to you about hurry. See, the opposite of patience is hurry, or impatience, right? But people who are impatient are often in a hurry. And so I want to talk to you about being in a hurry. And so I want to read from The Good and Beautiful Life, or Good and Beautiful God, which a lot of you know is one of my favorite books in all the world. And I might even be teaching this on Wednesday nights when we start up our Wednesday night Bible study here at the church. And so I'm going to be teaching that Bible study here at the church. And so the Lord hasn't confirmed it yet, but I might look into this book maybe. So he quotes from a guy by the name of Jeremy Rifkin. And he's an American, so when it says our nation, he means the United States, but I think it applies to Canada. We are a nation in love with speed. We drive fast, eat fast, make love fast. We are obsessed with breaking records and shortening time spans. We digest our life, condense our experiences, and compress our thoughts. We are a culture surrounded by memos and commercials. While other cultures might believe haste makes waste, we are convinced that speed reflects alertness, power, and success. Canadians, Americans are always in a hurry. Now, speed is not the problem. Our love of it is. Our impatience has made our life a dizzying blur. As a result, our spiritual lives are diminished as we try harder. We are becoming spiritually shallow and deeply disappointed. He goes on to say, it is ironic that in a culture so committed to saving time, we feel increasingly deprived of the very thing we value. We seem to have less time for ourselves and for far less time for each other. We have quickened the pace of life only to become less patient. We have become more organized and less spontaneous, less joyful. We are better prepared to act on the future, but less able to enjoy the present and reflect on the past. To date, we've surrounded ourselves with time-saving technological gadgetry, only to be overwhelmed by plans that cannot be carried out, appointments that cannot be honored, schedules that cannot be fulfilled, and deadlines that cannot be met. Then, a few pages over, he talks about a study that was made in 1967. And so, in 1967, long time, how many of you were alive in 1967? I was, yes? Okay. In fact, that was the year of Expo 67. I actually went to that in Montreal with my parents. I think I was in grade 8. Okay. 1967. Futurists told a Senate subcommittee, listen to this, that by 1985, which is ancient as it is, right? Thanks to technological advances, Americans would be working 22 hours a week. 22 hours a week for 27 weeks a year. The average worker would retire at age 38. A lot of you would be retired. They predicted that we have too much time on our hands. The reality is, today, that since 1973, leisure time has decreased by 37%. So what's wrong? What's wrong? I think of Jesus. And this is what Jesus says. Come unto me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I'm gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls, for my yoke is easy and my load is light. Interesting, eh? Now, you can take that two ways. You can say everybody's heavy laden and loaded down, and so it just makes sense they need to come to Jesus for rest. But you can also take it another way. If you are coming to Jesus, he promises rest. So if rest is not characteristic of your normal lifestyle, then maybe you're not coming to Jesus. Makes sense? In other words, is this frantic pace that we have in our world today, is that frantic pace actually godly? Is it like Jesus? That's questions that we need to answer and ask ourselves. Is rest characteristic of our life? Do people see us at rest? Do people see us, achieving things, but do they see a harassed and hurried life? And if they do, why, if Jesus promises to give that rest, do we not have it? John Ortberg, who I think was a pastor in Menlo Park, California, theologian, pastor, preacher, was going, I think, to Menlo Park for his first assignment. He had a friend by the name of Dallas Willard. I really like Dallas Willard. He's a very strong, I think, theologian. And anyway, so he asked his friend, as I go to this new ministry, give me one or two bits of advice on what I should do and what I shouldn't do, how I can be successful in this new ministry. And so Dallas Willard said, let me see what he said, ruthlessly eliminate hurry. Ruthlessly eliminate hurry. So John Ortberg said, well, what else? He said, that's it. Ruthlessly eliminate hurry. See, hurry is the antithesis of patience. When your life is in a hurry, there's no room for patience. You have to actually make room for patience, and therefore it actually takes an unhurried life. Not too long ago, not that I'm really proud about what I'm about to tell you here, but not too long ago, I had a little experience with Connie and the grandkids. In fact, this wasn't even 2 weeks ago. last Monday, or the Monday before that, there was a meeting of all the pastors in this area, and some people from Montana who are partnering with our churches in Alberta came, and they invited all the pastors and their wives to a rib steak breakfast, or a rib steak dinner. Now, some of you know that I can be the occasional vegan, but it's occasional. And so when there's rib steak offered, I might be there. Because I love rib steak. Anyway, so I had I took the day off that day, actually. And so I worked in the greenhouse for a while, and Connie said, since you have the day off, would you do some shopping for me? So I said, sure, before I got the list. Anyway, I mean, and you know how man shops, eh? Like women shop, they start at one end, they go right through systematically. They get to the other end, and then they go to the till, right? How do men shop? Oh, I don't know about you, but this is how I do it. I, do that, and then look at all the items I missed. And so then go boom, 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 back and forth to each end, asking different people, where is this, where's baking soda? Like, who knows what baking soda is? Anyway, so it took me longer than it was supposed to, and of course, in my mind, I'm always thinking about the fact that, okay, these pastors are all coming with their wives, they're cooking this steak dinner. I know that Rod's got things going here, and it's opened up and everything, and so it's all organized. But I'm thinking to myself, since I'm kind of the host pastor, I should be here on time, or earlier. I mean, that's the expectation. So, anyway, I get home, the thing starts at 6, and we're a good 35 minutes away from this church in Cochrane. And it starts at 6, I come home, and of course it was Connie's day to take care of the grandkids. And so we had Brielle and Coco. And so I get home and say to Connie right away, we gotta go right now. And of course she has the grandkids. And so the next question was, when is Jesse coming to pick up the kids? And Connie says, I don't know. And I thought, oh, that's not a good answer. Anyway, so I start putting away all the groceries, and I'm tense. No, I am majorly in a hurry. I am, I'm just really, really in a hurry. Anyway, and so Connie is kind of in a hurry too. So they were in the hot tub, so she gets them out of the hot tub, and she's kind of hurrying them around. And Brielle, who's one of the most insightful kids I've ever seen, says to Connie, Graham, why are you hurrying us? Why are you rushing us? And Connie said, well, Papa's got to go to a meeting, and we're kind of late. And with Brielle, there's always at least 4 whys. Like, so why 1, why 2, why 3, and why 4. Because she's not necessarily, I mean, you're not going to pull one over her. Like, anyway, so the third why was, well, when we're in a hurry, Papa drives too fast. And that makes me nervous. She's telling Brielle this. So finally she was satisfied, and she came into the kitchen, and she's watching me. And I could see that, but I didn't have time. Like I'm putting away all this stuff, and everything, getting ready, tenses and everything. And she just looks at me for a while. And then she goes back into the bedroom where Connie was dressing up the kids. And she says to her Graham, she says, Graham, you're right. Papa is really in a hurry. But then she says, but don't be nervous. Anyway, I thought to myself when I heard that story, well, first of all, I felt incredible conviction. Like, there's conviction from the Holy Spirit, and then there's conviction from a grandchild. That's the worst. when you realize they're smarter than you. And the reason this had happened was the fact that Connie, about 3 years ago, read this book. And at that point in time, she made a decision. She said, I didn't do so well with my children. I'm going to do better with my grandkids. I'm never going to be in a hurry. Ruthlessly eliminate hurry. When you think of Jesus, do you think of him as in a hurry? When you read the Gospels, is there any place where he's in a hurry? He can actually be interrupted at any point in time, right? In fact, lots of the stories in the Gospel are he's going somewhere, and what happens? Somebody interrupts his plan. And it's okay. How do you know if your life is overcharged, filled up to the brim? If you can't be interrupted. He's not in a hurry. He always has time for people. He notices when people have need. And this is something he also does. In chapter is this? 1:35 of Mark. In the early morning, while it was still dark, he rose and he went out and departed to a certain place. And he was praying there. Now this is me, Simon. And Simon and his companions hunted for him. And they found him and they said, "Everyone is looking for you." Everyone is looking for you. Isn't that kind of amazing? If you think of who has the most important agenda in the whole world, Jesus Christ. What does he do? Early in the morning, he goes off to be alone. If you read a little further in this, they found him. They said, "Everyone's looking for you." And he says to them, "Let us go somewhere else, to the towns nearby, in order that we may preach there, for that is what I've come for." In other words, his early morning time alone, with quiet and rest, was actually preparation for that day. Martin Luther is said to have spent, or his normal routine was to spend 2 hours in prayer and Bible study every day. In a day when he was just completely overcharged and had all kinds of appointments and all kinds of things going on, it is said that Martin Luther said this. He said, "Today is a very busy day. I will spend 3 hours of prayer instead of 2. Rest. What do you think? I've probably asked you this question before, but if you were a visitor to Jewish culture from another country, what do you think you would notice? If you've never been to Judah, what do you think you would notice if you were visiting from another country and you just happen to be right there with them, seeing what they do? Maybe they don't eat pork. So I guess you notice that. But the thing you would notice the most, I think, is 1 day in 7, they did nothing. 1 day in 7, they did nothing. See, the story of Mary and Martha. Now, I need to be honest with you, the story bugs me. Like, I don't know if I like the story. I would never hire Mary. I might hire Martha. So, of course, you know the story is Jesus comes to Mary and Martha's house. They're close. He's close to this family. And it's just before, really, the week of the Passion Week where he was about to be crucified. And so he's at their house. And Mary is at his feet. And she is anointing his feet with oil. And Martha is taking care of all the preparations. And so, wow. You look at this and you think, I mean, just to be honest with you, when my kids come over, to eat with us, which is quite often, we love that. After we finish eating, I kind of expect them to do dishes. Like, otherwise I get stuck with this, And anyway, that's an aside. Maybe I'm trying to send a message. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. So Martha is involved in all the preparations. Mary is anointing Jesus' feet with oil. Martha complains to Jesus and says, this isn't really fair. Like, she can help me in the kitchen. You know, there's not too many people to help. And hospitality for Jewish households was really, really important. And so, of course, Jesus retorts with Martha, Martha, that's a way of actually being endearing. So, in a way, Jesus is he's not being nasty to her. He's actually saying to her, I understand where you're coming from. But the problem here is your sister has chosen the most important thing, and that won't be taken away from her. And that's kind of key. If we're to understand the hurried life, everything is a decision between the good and the best. Very seldom between the bad and the best. It's always the good and the best. I mean, take my situation. It's actually good to be on time, isn't it? It's actually good if you're a host to actually be there before people get there. So that's really reasonable. The problem is, it wasn't the best. It was good. It's a kind of mixed up thing in a way, because maybe my pride was a little bit involved there. Well, quite a bit involved there. I had another experience, and I'm not excited to tell you about this one either, but I just think you maybe need to find out. I already know I'm just an ordinary guy. Connie and I were to go to a funeral one day, and so I do not like to be late to anything, but really, I do not like to be late to a funeral. That's the worst thing in the world, to be late for a funeral, isn't it? And so we're getting ready, and I'm looking at the watch, and I have a tendency to look at how much time it'll take us and then add 20 minutes, just in case. And so that drives Connie a little bit nuts, because she has a tendency to plan how long it will take and then subtract 10. I'm just kidding. I mean, I'm not kidding. Different kinds of people. So, we're looking at the time. It's getting a little tense. I got the car. I start the car. And this just shows you how stupid I am. Like, I'm thinking, well, I'm just going to save. I'm not thinking, but to save time, I put it in reverse before she even gets in the car. So that as soon as the door shuts, we're gone, you know? Anyway, so she's about to get in the car, opens the door, and notices that I didn't have my hat or gloves. And she said, it's going to be cold out there. It was a really cold day. And so she said, I'll go get the hat and gloves. And I'm a little ticked off because I was thinking, but who cares about hat and gloves? I want to get going. Anyway, not that much, but yeah. Anyway, so without realizing, I have it in reverse still. I get out of the car, and the car starts moving backward with the door, my door open, Connie's was closed, and the door goes back far enough before I can get back in the car and push on the brake. The door goes back enough that it hits the side of the garage and bends completely over. How stupid can you get? Like, I do stupid things, but boy, this is the best. Anyway, in the next few moments, I'm trying to figure out a way to blame it on Connie. But can't. This is so obviously me. Anyway, so we really quickly, bring the car back, can't even shut the door because it's like stuck and bent and the hinge and everything. And get in the truck and go to the funeral. And on the way, Connie says to me, you are always in a hurry. just said, yep, she's right. I hate that. What am I trying to say with this whole thing? That's just not the way to live, is it? It's just, I'm sure you've never done anything like that. I'm just the king on that one, yeah. But it's just not the way to live. I read a book a long time ago, I wish I would have put it in practice more, but called Margin. This is one of the best books I've ever read in my life, too. Margin. He talks about having space in your life that there's nothing in the space. In other words, you know what a book, you have a book, any book you have, you've got white space, right, in the book? And he says, well, why is that? Why not just, for efficiency's sake, just put words all over the page, not even have paragraphs. Just stuff it in there, because you don't want to read it, right? You don't want to read like that. And so he says you need emotional margin. You need physical margin. You need time margin. You need finance margin. What he's saying is you can't live your life like a machine where you're 100% efficient, always producing. You need to have rest and empty space in your life. I picked up that very night, by the way, that they happen to have books for the pastors. And so I sit at the table, and the book that's right on the top is Crazy Busy. I picked it up. And so this is some of what the guy says. He says we're crazy busy because we're in a hurry to get possessions. We're in a hurry to prove ourselves. We're in a hurry to get pity. So really busy people want pity. They'll tell you all the stuff they're doing in their life, and then people will give them pity and say, oh, that's so tough. You are so stressed. You've got so much going on in your life. And we actually think that's a compliment. Power. We want to be in control. We're in a hurry for power. Perfectionists. We don't want to make mistakes. That doesn't happen. Everybody makes mistakes. Position. Yeah. I'm doing this because people like me in my position are supposed to do it. Prestige. Finally, somebody will notice me. Or posting. Now, I'm not guilty of that. I don't post anything. But that might apply to some of us. It says here, why am I blogging? Why am I tweeting? Is it for my name and my faith? And just imagine. So, what does the Bible say about patience? To wrap this whole thing up. Well, first of all, it says it's a fruit of the Spirit. What does the Bible say about fruit? Well, John chapter 15, verse 5 says, I'm the vine, you're the branches. If you abide in me, and I in you, you will produce much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. So let's put that together. How are you going to be able to produce the fruit of patience with a non-hurried life? How am I going to do it? We have to trust God. We have to trust God. We have to abide in God. We have to make time for Him, either in the morning, or at night, or in the afternoon, or at noontime, whenever it is, doesn't matter. We make time for Him, and He produces the fruit. Come unto me, all those who are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. My yoke is easy. It's light. So, invitation this morning is very simple, isn't it? Firstly, take a deep breath. Is your life characteristic? Or is rest characteristic of your life? Are you always in a hurry? I realize that at work, like when I'm at the convention, I never walk down the We have two big hallways, and I'm always going back and forth. I almost run. No, I don't run, but it's as fast a walk as you could ever walk. God just said, slow down. Like, notice there's actually people in that building. Let's pray. Lord Jesus, we want so much to be like you. Lots of times we struggle. You don't ever seem to be in a hurry. And yet you accomplish the most important mission any human being could ever accomplish. You have time for people. You have time to see their need. You have time to be interrupted. Time for grandkids and for those who lots of people can neglect and not think are very important, and they're very most important. Father, help us to ruthlessly eliminate hurry, so that when people see us and watch our lives, they see rest, trust in God, abiding with God as the patterns, the rhythms of our life, instead of this hurried, harassed, stressful, anxiety-filled life. Lord, I know there's lots of pressures, but if you could keep us at peace and rest in the inside, in our hearts, then we could live so much better. Give us the fruit of the Spirit called patience, long-suffering, another way to say it. Father, help us to be more and more and more like you. In Jesus' name.
In the Bible, Jesus set aside to be on his own, to spend time in prayer. And that's really what this whole song